Hello, everyone. Today's book, we're going to be talking about nightmares. And these nightmares can do some very, very terrifying things to people. And you don't want to blink and you don't want to miss a page of this fantastic book. And we're going to talk about all that right now. All right. The book today is called The Nightmare Man by J.H. Markert. I want to first of all thank the publisher and thank NetGalley for accepting my request to get an advanced review copy of this book. I'd never read this author going in, but I liked the concept, I liked the cover, and it sounded interesting. In fact, that's the first thing that caught my eye when I read the description, because it mentioned scarecrows coming to life and killing people in horrible ways. And something you should know about me, you can count scarecrows right up there on my list of fears with dolls and mannequins. These things shouldn't exist, people. That's all I'm saying. They're human-shaped objects with those dead, unblinking eyes just staring at you, and you know when you turn your back, they're moving a little bit. They're moving toward you. They're plotting against you, my friends. And or maybe I've read too many horror books. I don't know, but that's the way I feel about things like scarecrows and dolls and mannequins and things like that. So when I first heard about the scarecrow angle, I was like, yep, I'm in. I want to read it. This sounds fascinating. But this book wound up being so much more than just about a killer scarecrow. And man, a couple things about this book you should know in advance. One, it's not coming out until early next year. That's right, this one's not coming out until January of 2023. I do not have a link where you can pre-order it because it's not available yet. However, I will leave a link down below to the author's Twitter page. And as new information comes to light, he'll let you know on the Twitter. And as soon as there is a pre-order date, if you're viewing this later in the year, I'll be sure to include that link in the description below. But I want to say right off that even though it's still, not even halfway through 2022, and everybody on YouTube are putting together their best of horror book lists for 2022, books that will come out this year. This book would have easily been on those lists if it had come out this year. Unfortunately, it doesn't come out till next year, but I, for one, it's my first book I'm putting on my best of list for 2023. That's how good it was. That's how confident I am that it's going to hold up. And this book is going to take you and a lot of other people by surprise, especially if you never heard of this author and you go in not really knowing what to expect. I think once you do, this book's going to grab you by the throat and not let go because it's just that good. So the basic plot is this. There's a horror author in this book, the main protagonist, I guess you can say. His name is Ben Bookman, and he's just finished his latest horror novel called The Scarecrow. The problem is, soon after it releases, somebody or something starts to act out the scenes in this book in real life, right down to the last detail. And his book describes a scarecrow coming to life. And he not only kills people, but he places their bodies and their body parts inside of a cocoon made of corn husks tied together, and then hangs them from the rafters of a barn or a porch or something like that. And somebody or something is acting out these scenes in the book as they happen in the book, right down to the smallest details. And so, of course, he soon becomes a man who's very wanted for all the wrong reasons. News vans and reporters are camped outside of his house. Of course, he's very much a person of interest by the police because this book had barely been released and now these things are happening. And We find out some things in the book that he had a brother that had went missing years ago. His little brother just up and vanished. And even at that time, he had been a suspect in his little brother's disappearance. So he might have a background that's not as nice and warm as he's trying to get people to believe. But really, despite, like I said, the scarecrow angle, other things happen in this book. Other horrific, terrifying scenes. And each one becomes more and more terrifying and more horrible as the book goes on. And we find out that this book isn't really so much about this one book within a book that he had written, this Ben Bookman, but it's something far, far more sinister. But really, this book is about nightmares. And the author does a great job of taking the concept of nightmares and adding with it enough folklore and enough legend to make it extra creepy, to the point where you probably don't even want to go to sleep at night. Because should you have a bad dream and you wake up gasping for air, your mind's going to go back to this book and the horrible things that happen in it. But in this book, nightmares can come from the dream world and invade our waking world. And these nightmares have the ability to possess people. It takes over their minds, it takes over their souls. And it makes people do some of the most, commit some atrocities to other humans, to their own family members. Horrible things, terrible things, things that these people would normally not do, they will do in this book once they're possessed of these nightmares. And the way that these nightmares come to life is something I really like about this book, because this author has created these visions of how these nightmares come about, how they possess people, and what happens in such a way that's completely fresh, completely unique, and something I've never read before in a horror book. I was completely 100% and very pleasantly shocked at how he did this and how he took something that's common in horror books, you know, the concept of nightmares, and turned it into something so original. That was one of the things I loved about this book. Another thing I like is that there are a lot of secrets in this book, a lot of twists and turns. We don't get information all at once. And even the most seemingly throwaway things that you might read in some of these pages become very important later on in the book, including the man's name. At first, when I saw the author's name in this book, Ben Bookman, that sounded like a little cliche, right? You couldn't think of a better name for an author than Bookman. But that becomes so important later as we find out more about Ben's past and why that name, or how that name came about. And let me just say this about Ben's past. It is dark and it is twisted, and it keeps getting more so the more we learn, to the point where you will be horrified. It's like a punch in the gut, some of these revelations. And unlike some books that may unleash all the secrets early on, or maybe all of them at the end, this one does a great job in letting you in on little clues and little sentences, little figments of thoughts that get your mind working without giving you the whole answer. And if you're like me, I mean, there are several times when I was reading this book where I was like, okay, I have to put it down because I just got this new information and I think I know what's going to happen next. And I was wrong all the time. Because every time when a piece of information is given, a chapter will end with more questions than actual answers, making you want to read and turn each page as quickly as you can, trying to find out exactly what's going on, because it's a race against time about these released nightmares. And as the body count keeps rising and people die and keep dying in the most horrific ways you can imagine, it's a race against time to try to figure out how to stop it, what it all means, and who, if anybody, is actually behind it. And let me just say this. A lot of times when books have a large cast of characters, all their voices kind of sound the same. It's like they're being written as a collective, especially the characters that aren't the main protagonists. But this is not the case in this book. Each individual character is written with so much love and attention. Each one talks and acts and has thoughts that are individual to them as the author has written them. So they all feel different, they all feel unique, and not at all the same. At no point in the book will you ever be confused about whose perspective you're seeing things from, because their voices are each so unique like that. And that's a hard thing to pull off, especially with all this supernatural stuff happening and the race to the big conclusion at the end, which was fantastic. I'm not going to give that away, of course. But I loved everything about this book, and it was so well done that, as I said earlier, if this book, when this book comes out in 2023, it's automatically the first book on my best of list. It was scary. It was horrifying. The secrets kept you coming back for more. And once you get to the conclusions, once you see everything that's going on, you look back on the book and think, wow, that's what that meant back here, or that's what they were talking about over here. Because it's so well put together and it's all wound up for you at the end. Like I said, I can't give you a link to Amazon to purchase it, but bookmark this video. There's a link down below if you want to join the author on Twitter so you can know more about this book and as it gets closer to release. My Twitter is also down below if you want to join me on there. And I'll keep you updated on the channel as more information becomes available about this book, The Nightmare Man. You're going to want to read it, trust me. And as always, thank you for taking some of your time spending it with me. I really, really appreciate it. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.